It is county number 28, 29 at this point, so we're reaching the end of the road, but it doesn't mean the quality is dipping. We've got two fantastic contributors today. We've got John Caulfield and we've got Shane Curran. John, first of all, you're with us, I think. How are things? A very good morning to you.
Lovely and sunny down in West Cork, so yeah, all good.
Brilliant stuff. I was just about to say that in terms of your sporting credentials, they might be more closely aligned with Cork City. So give us the picture on Roscommon. You're a former Roscommon minor.
Yeah, well, I was there anyway. Yeah, I suppose like everything else, obviously I grew up in Roscommon. My parents still live there, thankfully, in Lake Harrow. And so I moved to Cork at 20, and obviously I've played all my soccer in Cork. So, but underage, like I would have played in Roscommon football mainly. I would have played some soccer, but football was obviously the main game. So I would have played with the local club, St Dominic's. I would have been inside the town in Roscommon, played with Roscommon Gales for a little while as well. But yeah, sure, Roscommon would be a strongly GA county. So yeah, that was it. So obviously, I've lived in Cork then for the last West Cork actually for the last probably nearly 35 years. So yeah,
it's a bit of a nostalgic feel, then I presume, when you're looking back at all the candidates for your Mount Rushmore today.
Yeah, because obviously, at that time my dad would have been very strong in the local GA club, and he'd have brought me to all the county games. So I'd say, I think from about 72, 73 onwards, I was in Croke Park literally every year. We'd go to all the games, particularly the Roscommon matches. So there was a lot of players, and Roscommon did a 4 in a row in Connacht from 77 to 80. So they were all massive occasions when you were a young teenager growing up. So I'd have been at all those matches. So a lot of heroes in those teams for me. So yes, that's the way it was. And so obviously, of course, I have a brother as well. He was born and reared in Roscommon as well. So even though he moved to the States since, but yeah, lots of connections there, obviously.
Who was your hero if you had to pick one from that Roscommon team?
Well, obviously the standout would have always been, of course, Dermot Earley, because he was, that was an incredible team of, the McManuses, particularly Tony and Eamon and John O'Gara and John O'Connor and all these fantastic lads. But Dermot Earley was obviously the standout, and I think he was everyone's hero in that era. And but then close to the home in the village of Knockcrockery, the only man that lifted the Sam Maguire for Roscommon was Jimmy Murray. And when I was growing up, Jimmy or James, as we used to call him locally, he would have been involved in under 12 and under 14 teams when I was growing up as my trainer. So obviously he is a special bond, for me and for the area. And I suppose the fact that Roscommon haven't won All Ireland since.
Jimmy Murray is going to be somebody, I think, that is going to make this Mount Rushmore. Spoiler for anybody out there. How well remembered is his name in Roscommon GAA circles and in Roscommon sporting circles as a whole?
Well, look, he was the main man, because I think if you look at he owned a pub in Knockcrockery. His son owns it now. But if you go into his pub and you see the football he has still the football hanging from the ceiling from one of the All Irelands, all the photos of the games from 43, 44, 46, and so he's an iconic figure, and everyone that is from Roscommon, they all know who Jimmy Murray is, and anyone stuck in GA knows exactly that he was the top man, because when you win so few All Irelands, and he was the captain to win the only two that Roscommon have won, well, that tells its own story,
For sure. Shane Curran, you're with us. How are things?
Good morning. Apologies, dear lads, about the late arrival. Skype is giving me trouble. Deliveries are giving me trouble. So apologies. Just picked up on John there speaking about the late, great, iconic Jimmy Murray. And yes, I think if we could carve Jimmy out of stone again and have him back in our land of the living and the world in Roscommon, we would have him a tremendous man. And many a good night was had in his bar coming back from Athlone Town, Cork City matches and so on and so forth, and matches all over South Roscommon, North Roscommon, and it was as John said, they're a fantastic place to go for a bit of bit of crack and a sing-song, and Jimmy was truly and wholly an iconic man, but a brilliant figure as well. And I'm sure with John from Lochcockery there, he had many a good time in his youth.
It was as much to do with the character that he was as the player that he was then.
Jesus, he was a fabulous character. I mean, we used to always look for. We'd never pass Jimmy Murray's coming home from a match or coming home from anywhere you were, if you were that part of the world. It was into Jimmy. He could always regale you with a story about matches, and he loved fellas that were hard. He loved the hard guys. He loved the hard players. He never really lamented or looked back on his own career. He never even talked about his own career. It was always about the lads of today and the young fellas growing up and how he wishes he could see them winning an All-Ireland again, and maybe that should have, and blah, blah, blah. And he was just great. And then he'd crack an old song with a sing-song maybe late in the evening as well, if there was a few beers too many maybe, and everyone got a little bit raucous. But it was a great place. And as John said there, the football was hanging from the ceiling. John Murray has it there now, and it's always a great sight. And it survived actually a fire, the famous ball, and in Jimmy's, and still there to this day. And of course, in my own youth, I was fortunate enough to have a lot of Jimmy's playing colleagues in Castlereagh. JP the Doc O'Callaghan, Larry Cummins were two iconic figures as well. So all those stories had interconnections right throughout the county.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we've obviously two GA and League of Ireland presences this morning as well. We were trying to establish a bit earlier on just with John Shen in relation to Roscommon and what sort of a county it is exactly. Is it, I mean, GA sort of, despite both of your own CVs, is it GA start, middle and end?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Shane, go on.
No, it probably is in some respects. I think the man on the other side of the phone, I know he's far too humble to want his iconic jaw on Mount Rushmore. But John was a trailblazer, in the League of Ireland, and then soccer has been really, in fairness, the Roscommon League has been very strong for a long time. My own home club, Castlereagh Celtic, were in the Connacht League for quite some time. But John Caulfield, his name reverberates around the country when you talk about soccer in the county. The GA obviously is established in folklore, I suppose, because of the traditional nature of it. But I'd say, John, you were exposed to soccer as well, and maybe rugby to a certain extent. But the GA probably will be the game, I suppose, that is the most played. But soccer does still hold a fair swing in the county as well in terms of participation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, unfortunately, Shane, I have a few years than you, but so I suppose when I was growing up, yeah, there wasn't schoolboy soccer it was not existing at the time. You went into Athlone to play, and or like me, I went to school in Sligo, so I was used to. Sligo was a very strong soccer town, but in terms of Roscommon, underage soccer wasn't established, but junior soccer and was after starting off. And when you go up there now, there's a lot of clubs in Roscommon have fantastic facilities, soccer facilities, and it grew dramatically. But obviously, and rugby as well. There was clubs like Craig's, which I can still see and hear Frank Brandon promoting rugby in Craig's before anyone knew what rugby was. So it was the games grew, but definitely in terms of the big picture, it was just GA was the game, and football was the game, even though there was always people who were dedicated and promoted hurling very strongly, but football was the game. And I think there's no one grows up in Roscommon without knowing what the county team and county players like.
For sure, and one of those is already up there. Jimmy Murray is our first name on the list. You've already given a great breakdown of Jimmy. So, Shane, why don't you kick us off to your second pick of the morning? Who is the next name on your Roscommon Mount Rushmore?
Well, I know we're talking about Gaelic games and that, and Gaelic games has been synonymous, I suppose, in the county. But golf as well. There's a particular iconic golfer from Castlereagh, as it just has happened. It's Robert de Lacy Staunton. And Rupert would have captained Ireland might be a little known fact, but from 63, I think, to 72, he won 2 South of Ireland as well, I think, in 65 and 72, 73. An iconic golfing figure, really, and blazed the trail right across Ireland and Europe and indeed America with the Walker Cup. And he's a guy, I think, that's certainly worthy of mention in terms of another sport, and things like that. We've also got Sue Carthy, who some may or may not know, but is an iconic figure in the rugby world, and has been a trailblazer in terms of bringing women's rugby to the fore, right around Ireland and further afield, and it has done great work. And I think then in football, look, I was fortunate enough over a long number of years to play with and against Tony McManus, play with and against Frankie Dolan, and some other players. Danny Murray, who'll be Jimmy's namesake, was captain of Roscommon in 1980. You have Dermot Earley, a great player as well in the past, and also the late great Jerry O'Malley, who played with Roscommon in the 60s, late 50s and 60s. But for me, growing up, and Harry Keegan in Castlereagh, he was kind of one of our heroes growing up there. I think Danny Murray, for me, was a tremendous footballer. He was out before his time. He played the game before his time. He was a wing back, a marauding wing back in the 70s, in that common team of the 70s, 80s that were quite successful. And he was just a guy that doesn't get a lot of mention. Probably if you're looking at a normal day player, you're looking at the likes of Jack McCaffrey type, as good if not better, and back-to-back All-Stars. So he would shade it for me among any other, deservingly so, I think.
Right, okay.
Would you put him in, Shane, like as an ambassador of that team? Like, I mean, you said somewhat successful there. Like, that Roscommon team were unbelievable. Like, they obviously the ultimate success managed to escape them, but like only at the final hurdle on several occasions. Is he the one that you're kind of putting in as a? I mean, you mentioned Tony McManus there, another strong contender. Is he the one that you're kind of putting in as a flag bearer for that team?
Well, he's one that very little, very few people talk about. Danny Murray captained the team in 1980, and he was a player that done it on the big days. For me, as a youngster growing up, I used to love going to watch the team, as I did Tony McManus. And he was just an incredible player. Like, let's not forget as well, Frankie Dolan won an All-Ireland and kicked an iconic score to win at senior level, and was without doubt the best forward I ever played with. Left, right foot, outstanding, kicked 25 points in 2 championship matches. I think a culmination of 50 points over a championship season. And still didn't get an All-Star, by the way. But, Danny, to me, while he doesn't get a lot of credit, he was way before his time. He was a fantastic player. As I said, back-to-back All-Stars. He could defend, he could attack with the best of them, and very rarely let Roscommon down, if ever. And to me, he's just a brilliant player. And he had a very long career. But because of his nature and his demeanour, he doesn't really get an awful lot of credit nationally for his achievements. But for me, he should be on the top. All-Stars from the last 50 years. I've seen a team picked and his name wasn't even mentioned, which is really bizarre, considering that he was such a terrific footballer.
But he's not on your list, I don't think. Frankie Dolan's not making your list, Shane. So we've got Jimmy Murray and Danny Murray so far on your list. We will get John to make an alteration very soon. Can we just get to your third pick? Because I think you've touched on this name over the last couple of minutes in the brilliant breakdown of the contenders.
Frankie Dolan.
Oh, Frankie Dolan is on your list.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Frankie Dolan is on my list. He would have to be, because Jimmy and Danny and Frankie will be the 3 on my list in terms of football. And just as a wild card, I'd be looking at Rupert DeLacy Staunton, that many wouldn't know, but from a golfing background, we'd stick him up there.
Oh, so sorry. So Rupert DeLacy Staunton is also on your Mount Rushmore?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got your 4, which we've gone through here in record speed. We've got Jimmy Murray, we've got Danny Murray, we've got Frankie Dolan, and we've got Rupert DeLacy Staunton.
That's it.
Brilliant. So you've set the stall out. How this works if you're joining us for the first time here today is that the stall has been set out. Then John will be able to make one alteration. We'll also have a final pitch in a moment. But John, first of all, your thoughts on that Mount Rushmore and how Shane has thought about it and the names he's ended up with.
Yeah, well, look, Shane has picked great people there and mentioned, a lot of good people. Obviously, Danny, and he's right there again. That team. I have huge fond memories of that team, and Danny was the captain and a tremendous wing back, and certainly underrated. And but like Shane said, Keegan, Lindsay, Kennellan, O'Gara. I suppose there were so many brilliant players in that team. Tony Mack, who was a fantastic player. But yeah, absolutely, great name. I suppose I'm shying towards Dermot Earley because I just felt he was the iconic figure. But absolutely, Danny was there. Frankie, of course, winning the All-Ireland with Bridget's, and he's the postman in Harrow at the moment, delivering the letters to my parents. So obviously he deserves a mention. and a great character. But and an interesting one in terms of in golf there, because I wasn't aware of that. So yeah, all certainly people of the highest quality. Are you saying I do? Are you asking me? Do I agree with it? Is it?
Yes. How many of those would you have?
Well, I'm different. I've none of those. Okay, so certainly for me, the reason I went with Dermot Earley over Danny Murray was simply because Dermot's lifespan and what he achieved for Roscommon. I believe he had more influence on the team and in the county over a longer period than anyone on that in that team of the late 70s, 80s, and I just think Dermot was the best footballer at that time for a number of years in the county. And
John, will you talk to us a bit about Dermot, just about for people who might not be aware of him, of a younger generation, of the character, the style, as much as you can give us in terms of Dermot, because he's a name that comes up so regularly, but we never really have or take the opportunity to spend a bit of time on what type of player or character he was.
Yeah, well, I suppose the thing about Dermot, he originally came from the Michael Glavies club. He was obviously in the army and he moved to Kildare, and he had a brother called Paul who also was a top player, moved to Australia and played Australian rules for a while, and obviously his son is Dermot Jr., who would have played with Kildare before. But Dermot was probably midfield, centre half forward, strong physical man, obviously an army guy, very disciplined, great at carrying the ball, great to score from 30, 40 yards, and was just a leader of the team, an inspirational player. And I suppose, when you followed the county at that time, he was like the number one name on the sheet, or the number one player at the time. I suppose a bit like Roy Keane with United and these type of people. He was Dermot was the guy. And while all those players, like they were, they won 4 Connachts. Unfortunately, in 1980, lost to Kerry in the All-Ireland final. But they had been, on the doorstep and just couldn't win that, that All-Ireland. But, all those players were tremendous. And but for me, Dermot just had that leadership quality, and he dug Roscommon in many situations when the game was in the melting pot, and he drove the team on to win the game. And I suppose, look, at the end of the day, I was a young fella in my teens at that stage, and while all the guys were brilliant, he was, for me, the leader and inspiration of that team, and that's why I'd give him the nod over Danny. But then again, as Shane says, Danny was a fantastic player. Tony Mack, he was younger probably than Dermot was probably older of all those lads at the time, and he was another fantastic player. But they all were, you know what I mean? But I just felt that Dermot had that he was the sort of the figure of the team, the father figure of the team, and always, when the games were tight, he was the guy who really led the team, and that's why I give him the nod over Danny.
Well, before you make any final decisions, we want to bring in Tony Conboy here, who is a Roscommon GEA historian from Boyle. Now, he is convinced as well that Dermot Earley should be up on Roscommon's Mount Rushmore.
pleased to be on here and making the case for Dermot Earley, who for me, when you rang me about this, was the first name that came into my head to be on your Mount Rushmore, where he'd accompany a couple other military men, actually, Washington and Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt. But so I hope the lads they won't have any problem in putting Dermot Earley on the Mount Rushmore scene.
Why
Dermot Earley,
why does he have to be on it, Tony?
why does he have to be on it? Because he is a Roscommon legend, of course, and he began around 1965. He went to St. Matthew's College, and he played for Roscommon on minor, under 21, junior, and senior in one year. I think that was 65 or 66, and then he played for 20 years after that, until 1985, when he was carried off the field in the Connacht final in Hyde Park by the opposition, who were the Mayo team, who had beaten Roscommon on that particular day. Now, I framed my kind of case for Dermot Earley in terms of, let's say, against someone else, maybe George Best. I think you had him on, or had him mentioned. In terms of longevity, he was 20 years there at the top. Also, he was a tremendous professional in his professional life, where he became the Chief of Staff of the Irish Army. And he was actually in the Irish Army from 65 when he entered as a cadet until 2010 when he died. Tragically died at the age of 62. So that was 45 years. And 45 years as a former teacher, 45 years would be pretty telling. So he made a social difference in terms of a role model. If you would say George Best. Now, George Best was a genius of a soccer player for a short time, but Earley was a player for 20 years. He made a social difference in terms of his becoming a role model. And everyone in Roscommon knew Dermot Earley. Everyone wanted to meet him, get photographs with him, autographs with him, and so on. And he was equally regarded in Kildare, where he lived with the Army in Newbridge in Kildare. After his playing career with Roscommon, he won 2 All-Stars, 74 and 79, and he was in the Roscommon team of the Millennium, naturally enough. And then he managed Roscommon after his playing time, and then he went on to manage Kildare. And also between the family, then his son Dermot has a couple of All-Stars as well. His daughter, actually, Noelle, has an All-Star for ladies Gaelic football. So that house has 2, 4, 5 All-Stars, plus his brother Paul also. Now, he was also kind of regarded nationally, which is, it's few people like, we had a few there called Jerry O'Malley, who was known nationally, famous Cullen of a player from the 1960s and 70s. Jimmy Murray, of course, and Jimmy Murray's pub in the Crockery was the heartbeat of Roscommon football, and he had kept a famous diary there, and he had tremendous memorabilia from that, and people came from all over the country if they're passing through the Crockery, hurlers, Eddie Kerr, and those kind of people, different people, and signed the book. And also, Bill Carless was another great player. He captained Roscommon Miners in 1941, having won in 39. And he was another kind of Cullen figure. And he went to New York. He had won 3 All-Ireland medals. That's the minor 41, 43. He was actually there in 39 as well. So he won 4 All-Ireland medals. And then he went to New York in the late 40s, which we missed, and played with New York and won a league title with New York. So he's the only Roscommon man. That's Bill Carless now, to have won a league and also have All-Ireland senior medals. Now, a man I will mention here and want to mention is a lot of Roscommon people wouldn't know him, but he was an absolutely brilliant handballer, the Duxie Walsh of the 30s in handball, and he came from Boyletown here, Paddy Perry, and he holds something that an achievement that will not be repeated. He won 3 Dublin senior medals on the one Sunday. He was a member of the Garda, and the Garda won the senior football championship on that Sunday. Afterwards, Paddy was inveigled to play hurling with him. Maybe they were short or whatever. He wasn't really a hurler, but he won a senior hurling medal. And that evening, then he won a Dublin senior handball medal, beating a man called Paddy Berry in that. So Dermot, as I said, I especially think of when he had left the army, what would he have achieved subsequently as a particular person? You know, he would have been a candidate for, say, a presidential candidate. He could have done anything because of his reputation and the respect. He had enormous respect. You'll never meet anyone that will say a bad word about Dermot Earley. They couldn't say it. They couldn't certainly say it in the company of Roscommon people. So that's my case for Dermot Earley.
Tony Conboy there. So the easy thing for us to do would be to allow John to make his change and put Dermot Earley up in the mountain, but we're not going for that. Shane Curran, we got to hold you to account here for not putting Dermot Earley up in the mountain. After listening to that, on behalf of the people of Roscommon, you're representing your county here, not yourself. Let's not forget that, Shane. Jimmy Murray, Danny Murray, Frankie Dolan, and Rupert DeLacy Staunton, they all get in ahead of Dermot Earley. Are you sure, 100% positive you want to do this, Shane?
No, I think all I was doing was opening up the debate. I think obviously, you know, it'd be very boring if we were all the same. And look at Tony. Dermot Earley is the iconic figure of Roscommon football. And absolutely, Tony has so eloquently put it. A bit like maybe Chris O'Dowd, even though Chris O'Dowd's career wasn't as glittering on the football pitch. Dermot's football career and his army career obviously transcended life. As Chris O'Dowd has been a fantastic ambassador for Roscommon, may not have been a brilliant footballer, but went to minor level, but it has done great work for the context. Look, when I was growing up, Dermot Earley would always be the name that would be on the tip of everyone's tongue.
Get him in there, Shane. Come on, get him in there. Get him in there.
Absolutely, and no doubt about that. And look at by way of voting and things like that, I'd have absolutely no problem having Dermot Earley on Mount Rushmore. I mean, he probably could chisel it out himself. He was so strong and so brilliant. I just think that other people are worthy of debate, and that's why I throw in Danny Murray and Frankie Dolan and Rupert DeLacy Staunton, just from a different perspective. You know, it's very easy to talk about Dermot Earley, and he was absolutely iconic. But let's just let the argument evolve a little bit more. You know,
we've only 4 places up there. You're looking for you're ploughing the furrow by that a lot of other counties have gone where they're looking for 5 or 6 names. I think we've got Jimmy Murray. We're all in agreement with.
Yes, we're all in agreement. I think with Dermot Earley. Yeah.
We're all in agreement with Dermot Earley. So they're the two absolute get our chiseler underway and get that underway. So Shane, close out your list of 4. I think maybe that's what we'll do now before we throw it open. We'll throw it over to John to make his one challenge. So they're the first 2. Who are the other 2 names that you would run with, Shane, in terms of your final 4 then?
Look, I think obviously this, you know, people will debate about the longevity of players and you know what they achieved and what they didn't achieve, and you know, I mean, we've got a lot of present day players people as well that are worthy of mention. Like Jack Carty, obviously, who is a rugby international.
Yeah, that's true.
One of the few. And Tony brought up a person there, Paddy Perry from the handball, but another man who blazed the trail in terms of handball was Mickey Walsh. From Roscommon, and Mickey, I couldn't tell you the amount of titles he has. And he also was on the big court and the small court. He's equally adept at 60 by 30. I'd say that's a name you'd know, John.
Shane, we're going for a list. How many are you looking for us to put up here?
I tell you what, to be honest about it, John Caulfield has an awful lot done. I mean, John Caulfield is the record League of Ireland scorer, record Cork City scorer. He's managed at the highest possible level, European standard. You know, an iconic player, and I think we got to look outside. You know, we got to look outside Gaelic football. I mean, sport has been sport is all encompassing, you know.
Shane, can I just you're a striker with the ball at the corner flag, trying to delay as much as possible here. We're going to need a decision to be made here on your final four. Is Dermot Earley going on your mountain or not?
Oh no, he's on the mountain.
Oh,
yeah.
he's on the mountain. Okay.
He's on the mountain. Oh God, Jesus Christ! Oh yeah, no, he's on the mountain. But, you know, after listening to John and listening to Tony, I'd love to come here. I'm only just being a little bit, early morning banter and just trying to get the juices flowing. We have to have Dermot early on, and of course, look, just talk about putting somebody halfway up the ladder, and then maybe Dermot just passes them out right at the top. You know, Jesus, lads, don't want me down here. So, I never believed there was something you never know about Dermot early.
So sorry,
just. So yeah, that's just Dermot early on.
Is he replacing Frankie or Rupert?
Well, look at that. I'll tell you a funny story about Rupert, and just quickly for our listeners, right? This is actually the truth. He was a genius golfer now. I mean, this guy was, and I know people won't know about him, but he was a genius. But there was a young fella in Castlemaine one time, and he was out of the game, and Rupert had a 7-iron, he was practicing on the green a blower, and the ball was coming back. He was putting backspin on the ball, right? This young fella was out of the game, and he was off for about 26 or 28, and he goes over to Rupert, and he said, Mr. Staunton, he says, well, geez, I'd like to know how you put backspin on the ball. And then Rupert said to him, you know something, son, what handicap are you? He said, 20 years. But he said, son, it's very important that you learn to put the ball forward, not back. So that was his way of telling the young fella to get back practicing, you know. So I don't know, really. I don't know. I don't know Frankie Dolan on it. He's my era. We won an All-Ireland together. I think he's one of the greatest forwards I've ever seen playing, one of the greatest players I've ever seen playing, and he won an All-Ireland.
So it might be the first county that we have to throw this open up to a public the way we're going here. John, we've got two names that we know are definitely up there, and there's been strong cases made, I think, after that for Frankie Dolan and for Rupert de Lacy Staunton, who is a name that I had not heard of before this morning, but I know now chapter and verse.
We better throw Chris O'Donnell in there now as well, lads. I mean,
we're going to put Ming Flanagan in there if we... No.
He could have. Ming could not kick the football, right? So he couldn't play nothing, and he was just... Ming is a good talker, but hey, we're not putting him up on the foot no way.
So we just need to. We're running out of time here. So just for clarity's sake, we're putting Dermot Earley, Jimmy Murray, Danny Murray, and Frankie Dolan. Is that anecdote by way of politely saying Rupert de Lacy Staunton is not on your mountain? We just need to get a final answer now, Shane.
Well, look at lads. In the interest of fairness, I absolutely have to have Frankie Dolan on it. We have to have Frankie Dolan on it. Yeah.
Okay.
So poor old Rupert, and his 7-iron is gone. So, okay.
He's gone. Right. So John, it's over to you then. Shane's Mount Rushmore is Jimmy Murray, Danny Murray, Frankie Dolan, and Dermot Earley. You have the opportunity to take one of those names off and put one of your own on. What are you going to do?
Well, in fairness to Shane, he's after playing a blinder there, and I would say that, look, there's a couple of guys, and Shane mentioned, obviously in the modern era, Jack Carty, the fact he's an Irish international and he's still playing at the moment. And obviously that the girl from Castlereagh, Rourke, who won a European Championship in boxing, so she's starting out for a career. But I suppose I'd like to throw one in of in the crockery has a lot of great contenders, but there's a man, a Kilcline, a guy called Brian Kilcline, who lifted the FA Cup in 1987 for Coventry, and he was the captain, and his dad is from Gailey in the crockery, so all his first cousins live in that area, and he used to come home in the 80s to the crockery in the summer holidays, and he'd be up at the Gaelic pitch. So, while he was born in England and he played all his soccer career in England, his dad is from the crockery. His mother actually is from Mayo. She's related to Jason Doherty, who played football for Mayo. But so he's a guy that would have visited Roscommon. But would that be included, lads?
It's up to yourselves, really. Yeah, I was making a case for John Aldridge on the Athlone one, John. So you know what I mean. It's on the Westmeath one.
So I just throw out here something different, because his dad is from the crockery, and obviously he was captain when they won the FA Cup. Another lad there that probably Shane and know, Padraig Moran, prolific goal scorer, played with from the Roscommon side of Athlone, and would have played went to England to Hearts, or went to Scotland to Hearts, and came back and played Sligo. Was prolific for about 9 seasons, and a very underrated, very unassuming guy, but did the business. And so there are a few guys out there, but obviously based on Shane's, Dermot Early and Jimmy Murray, absolutely. Frankie is was an incredible player, and obviously the fact that Roscommon won the Club All Ireland and Bridges with Shane there won it, and Frankie was the main man. Of course, he's an outstanding player, but I think somewhere in that list, I think the fact that Jack Carty has been capped for Ireland in rugby, I think is a unique achievement as well, and that he'd have to be in there,
And who are you taking off? So Jack Carty is who you want to put onto the Mount Rushmore.
Actually, I'm going to throw one in here, lads, as well, and I know I'm biased, but athletics is probably the toughest sport. One of these toughest sport. Any of those individual sports, whether it's athletics, boxing, any of those, they're the mental strength. And I'm going to throw in my own brother, Daniel or Danny. He went to the States at 16 on a scholarship, and he ran for Ireland. And he was second in the Wanamaker Mile, the one that Eamon Coughlin had won for a number of years. And he ran in the World Indoor Championships for Ireland in 2001, and he came 8th. So he was a very prolific in athletics in terms of what he achieved. Obviously, he didn't win Olympic medals, but when he used to come home and train during the summertime, the training he would have done certainly was far superior than what I'd have done, or anyone that would have done in team sports, because that's a grueling game. So again, he wouldn't have been stand out because he wouldn't have won Olympic medals, but he ran for Ireland for probably 6 or 7 years and was national champion, and ran in the world indoors. So he had a bit of a pedigree about him,
So just to push you on your final change, then, John, what's it going to be?
Well, actually, can I throw one in there to the mix, John, before you do it? Are you there? Yeah.
Yeah. Go for it. Who are you throwing into the mixer?
Do you remember the big wrestling fellas one time, Big Daddy and Giant Haystack?
Yeah.
Yeah, Giant Haystack. He had he is serious for Salmon Connection, and Joe Corrigan, the Manchester City goalkeeper, would be related to the Towies in Ballahadreen. Now they claim to be from Mayo, but Ballahadreen is in Roscommon, and Giant Haystacks would be related to the Duggans, so Derek Duggan and all that. We played football in Roscommon.
Hold on, Giant Haystack's parents were from County Mayo.
Well, there's Castlereagh connections there. The Duggans are originally from Castlereagh, or originally from Mayo, but they live in Castlereagh. So I don't know how you want to just spread out the Roscommon connectivity a little bit like a spider's web, a small bit, We grasp on anything, But Joe Corrigan will be a great one there as well. He obviously played with England and that. And look, the Mayo ones will have to play him as well.
If you're doing that, you may as well go for John Gunning from Castlereagh as well, the fella who went to Japan and became a sumo wrestler.
Just never heard of him. I heard of John. Well, actually, John, you did right. Yeah, quick. Yeah. No, he didn't look like a sumo wrestler when I was going to school, but I
think that the nomination of Giant Haystacks completes the wildest ride of Mount Rushmore. And I'm still not 100% sure who's actually on the thing.
We don't. John, you haven't committed. You need to. You can either go. You can either go with Shane's Mount Rushmore, or you can give us a change, and we will make the change for you. So what's it going to be, John?
No, I think Jack Carty has to go in there, lads.
And who are you taking off?
Well, like I'm trying to see. At this stage, Shane has about 14 picks, so I'm confused myself.
Jimmy Murray and Dermot Early.
So I presume it's Jimmy Murray. It's Dermot Early, and Shane is Frankie Murray in there. And who's the fourth, Shane?
Frankie Dolan.
And Danny Murray.
No, I think Jack Carty has to go in there. I think we have to have some. We have to have a different sport in there.
Yeah.
So you take off Frankie or Danny, John? What are you thinking?
Well, I'm not going to insult Danny Murray because he was a hero of mine, along with all those other guys. But I think at the same time, Dermot was part of that team. Jimmy was from a different era. When Jimmy Murray when Roscommon went to All Irelands. Dermot was from that era, and Frankie's from a different era. So I don't think we can have, because if we're talking about Danny Murray, I'd have to go for Tony Mack, and I think you have the same team. So I think that Jack Carty would have to go in for Danny.
For Danny, okay. So to round things off, then, The Roscommon Mount Rushmore is Jimmy Murray, Dermot Earley, Frankie Dolan, and Jack Carty. I won't even ask you if you're happy with that, lads, because we're going to do a U-turn immediately. I'll ask you.
I think we need another debate on this, to be honest. I don't really do.
I'll just ask you finally, where is the mountain going to be? Where will this be etched?
Jeez, I don't know, the top of Skyline Hill, Johnny, wouldn't be a bad spot.
I couldn't quite make that out, but it was the top of some hill anyway.
The top of Skyline Hill.
Oh, Skyline Hill.
It's not too far from the top of Skyline Hill, I think, is about the highest point. Or where Strokestown is a fairly high mountain in Strokestown as well. But no, I think the top of Skyline Hill would be grand.
Brilliant. Well, listen, Shane and John, it's been a pleasure. Thanks a million for going through it, doing the research, and ending up with a great Final Four.
Can I just say there, lads, is that Shane, in his great days, saved a penalty in 1985 and cost Derry City the league. And he wouldn't be a very popular man up in Derry, as he knows. And it was one of the days that if Alex Ferguson was in the stand that day watching Shane, he would have played with Man United, and he would have been in the top four. But unfortunately, Alex Ferguson wasn't there that day.
And a good man for taking a penalty as well, John, of course.
Great man for taking penalties, particularly in Castlebar.
Well, listen, lads, it's been great spending some time in your company. Dermot Earley, Jimmy Murray, Jack Carty and Frankie Dolan at the top of Scrine Hill. That is it for Roscommon's Mount Rushmore.
OTB AM's Mount Rushmore.
That was entertaining, Adrian.
Oh, Jesus, that was a white knuckle ride.
It was. It's we've got a WhatsApp in here from Christopher. Says, how was Fergal O'Donnell not mentioned? Minor manager, Connacht's winning captain as player. It's a good shout. We tend to, after we have these conversations, go through some unbelievable contenders, and then some great people don't ever get mentioned. But yeah, that was a white knuckle ride. We got completely made a fool out of on the Dermot Earley front. We thought that he wasn't initially included in the list, but it was the greatest reveal of all time that actually, gotcha, Dermot Earley is on my list. So that was Shane Curran.
The list that we had no relevance really to the conversation. It materialised quite quickly.
No.
Whatsoever.